Hello, this is Kara from Color Carrier, and I have another video for you today. Today I'll be doing a review of the Inktense pencils and blocks, and I am super excited. Before I start, I want to thank the fans and the patrons over on Patreon for making this video possible, because this video is literally made possible by you. I got this set from a mystery fan who used my Amazon wish list down below to get this for me, so that was pretty amazing. I do not have that person's name because they didn't leave a note, but I want to thank you so much, mystery fan. You rock, and this video is made possible by you. And I got this with the money that I received from the patrons over on Patreon who make a monthly donation of $1 or more to keep the channel going. So I am super excited, and thank you guys so much for that. So I'm gonna take a break, and then I will be back and we can get started. Okay, so the way that I do my reviews, I'll do the same thing that I always do, is I will talk a little bit about the product itself, and then I will do a swatching. After swatching, we'll do a comparison with other similar brands. Yes, there is one that's similar-ish, not exactly the same. And then after that, we will do the final conclusions. So let's get started. The first thing about these Inktense pencils and blocks is they are water soluble media. They are not watercolor, and that is important, and that is really helpful to know for how you use these and what you do. But these are ink and not watercolor. I have to say that again, ink and not watercolor. Thus the name Inktense. They come in pencils like this. This is out of order. I'm gonna put this back in the correct order. And they also come in blocks, and blocks are like this. They're sort of similar. They're kind of like smallish pastels, smallish soft pastels in shape blocks that they had, but they can be used sort of like crayons, and then you can dissolve them. You can use these paint wells to kind of use them like a watercolor pan. You can do all sorts of stuff with them, so that's really cool. So there's that. These are great for layering, but as the title implies, there will be something here that I think a lot of people maybe misstate, including Derwent, about these pencils, and these blocks. They tell you that they are permanent when you lay them down, and that's what makes them different from watercolor. I do not necessarily agree that they are permanent, and we're going to see in my test. I'm going to show you in my test how I know that they're not permanent when you lay them down. And they also come in a variety of sets. There's one thing that I have to tell you when I open this up. Let me show you something. So I got this set with my own money. This is a set of 12, and I was generally unhappy with the selection of the set of 12. So I was really happy for the patrons to be able to let me get a larger set and really give them a full review. So anyway, they come in sets of 12. Both the tins and the blocks come in sets of 12, 24, 36, and 72. Now the set of pencils also come in a set of 72 that is in a wood case. So let me show you this. These come in these little, really super flimsy trays. Look at this. I don't know if you can see how thin this plastic is, but this is super thin plastic here. And I know a lot of people take their pencils out and put them in cases and trays and that sort of stuff. I do not. So also I have a couple of tips break. So that was that. A little bit less exciting. But anyway, so a lot of people take their things out and they put them into like cases and stuff. I generally don't do that, so I want the included case to be of high quality, and this is not a high quality case at all. In fact, even though I've only had it for a few months, this is already starting to come apart, and I have no idea. I'm gonna have to like buy a case for it when it comes, when that happens, and that's unfortunate because I do like to use the tins that these things come in. I actually still have my original tin. I think I have one set of pencils where I had to throw out the tin, but for the most part I like to keep the tins. Anyway, the other thing is, when I first opened these, there was such a smell, and I think the smell is from the paint used to color this from this blue paint right here used to color these pencils, because when I got the Inktense blocks, now granted this is a smaller set, they did not have any smell at all when I first unwrapped them, but when I unwrapped these, it was such a smell. I literally had to have these lay out for like a few hours before I was able to even like get near them. It was such an unpleasant smell. But the good news is that once you use them, once you take them out of the wrapper, and once you let them aerate, the smell does dissipate, which is good because it was a terrible smell. Anyway, so there's that. If you have a strong nose, then that's something for you to consider. That doesn't really affect the quality of the pencils. That's just something for you to know when you are getting them. So there is that. Let's see what else I am. These pencils do come in a set of 72, but you are actually not getting 72 pencils. What you are getting is you are getting 70, I'm sorry, not 70, you are getting 72 pencils, but you're not getting 72 colors. What you're getting is you're getting 71 colors, including white, plus a, what's called an outliner. And I'll talk to you guys about the outliner in a minute. But the thing that I was kind of surprised about the outliner is they give you an outliner, which is basically supposed to be a pencil that's waterproof, and that doesn't move. But Derwent makes water-soluble graphite. So I don't understand why they didn't just include the water-soluble graphite pencil that they already make. Just include the light wash, and your lines will dissolve so that you don't see them. And if you want your lines to be seen, then you can use like a pen or something. But anyway, that's just my personal thing. We have been talking for a while, so I want to get going with the things. The other thing is that the colors here do not match the actual colors for all of them. A lot of these, especially right here, you see that that they look really close on the tips, but then when you use them, they are quite different. So, and this is the same thing we saw with the Pro colors, that these tips do not necessarily match the what the actual color produces. So if you are not accustomed to making a swatch chart, I would strongly recommend that you have one for these because of that color incongruity and the fact that they don't necessarily match. The other thing that I had a problem with, especially with the drawing that I chose to make with these, is and we'll talk about that in more detail later on, but the color selection here is more limited than it should have been. With 72 colors, I would have expected a little bit more variety. There's not really a gray, and I know that what they tell you is there's this Payne's gray. What they tell you to get a lighter gray color is to use a little bit less pigment and to make it more watered out, but it's really not the same as having a true gray color, and you really don't get the same results as having a true gray color, because gray is not that easy to mix for watercolor pencils, or for coloring pencils, in general. But anyway, that's sort of my opinion, and it shows up more in the piece that I decided to do for this project. So there's that. As I said, there's limited range of colors, but there is a lot of pluses here. These are thick, round pencils. They dissolve quickly and instantly, and we're going to see that when we do the swatching test. These dissolved so good, and they just really, really work really well. Aside from the gray, which is really the only one where I really felt like I needed to have a real gray. For the other colors, you can see in this page that I finished, you can see that you can get really, really dark tones, but you can also get really, really light and faint tones with the same pencils, just with using maybe more water and less pigment, and just washing it out. You can definitely do that. And this was done with the Inktense blocks. Some of this was done with the blocks, and some of this was done with the pencils, and this was done with like a mix of both. So there's that. The white for the pencils and for the blocks, more so for the blocks, is really, really opaque, and that's a really, really good thing. You can use that to your advantage, and you can do great things with that. For the white, like I said, these are very vibrant colors. They are not necessarily the most light fast colors on the market for water soluble media, so you will have to keep that in mind, that they're not the most light fast colors. In fact, I would say that I would not count on these, like I would not count on something you make with this to be able to frame and have it last. So if that's something that you do, I know some people do, just be aware that it may fade or what have you. So there's that. So if you're gonna, make stuff for selling, then I would advise you to make prints instead of selling completed works with these. They do work up really fast because they dissolve so quickly and so cleanly. Let's see, the other thing that I really, really like about these, and that is really, really special about these, is that you can use these on fabric and on other media. So that's really wonderful. And I don't know if I've shown you this thick lead, but this is a 4mm lead core. So that's really wonderful, nice thick core. So there is that. So I'm going to take a break, and then when I come back, we're going to do the swatching. All right, so now we are here for the swatching portion, and basically what I'm going to do is I'm just going to, I've gone through and I've put in the colors that come in the set of 12, and then we're going to dissolve them, and then when we end the swatching, I'm going to just show you that even though these are supposed to be permanent when you first lay them down, they're really not, and that's kind of the big sort of like the big thing that I discovered in doing this and in testing this is that if you want to, you can actually lift the colors, but it is more difficult than with a lot of really inexpensive watercolor pencils. So anyway, let's start with the sun yellow, and one thing you'll see right away is you'll see that this pigment comes out really nicely and really strongly really quickly. And that's one of the really nice things about these pencils and the blocks, is that they dissolve so quickly and so neatly, and you get a lot of color right away. So there's that. So look at this tangerine. You can see how you can move that color as well as dissolve the color that's here. And then I'm going to show you this because I think that this is one of the things, is you see how much color remains on your brush and how much color is picked up and just how much pigment is on there. So that's why I have the little towel here, or else I would have to have 2 of these, and I don't necessarily want to have 2 of them. All right, so there's that. The next color is poppy red. Now, one thing I didn't like about the set of 12 is, as I mentioned before, I didn't find the set of 12 to be the most versatile set of 12 there is. And I also found that actually throughout the whole set of 72 and the whole range of colors, is that I'm not sure what was the deal with the color selection, but it's not a particularly well balanced color selection, and I don't know what that's about. But it's true, it's not that well balanced. So that's really unfortunate. Like, for example, in this set of 12, you have 2 reds. You have 2 browns, but they're very similar browns. So, and then there's only 1 yellow. I don't know. I was not that impressed with this variety. And that could just be me. And because these are inks, I'm gonna say that they're dye based as opposed to pigment based, which might be why they fade. That's just an assumption. I didn't actually see anything that said that, but that's just my guess. I mean, I could be wrong. I don't know. That was my guess. Anyway. So this is the deep indigo. Sorry, deep indigo. It's called dark indigo. There's a similar color in the Albrecht Dürer pencils, and that's called dark indigo, and I really like that color a lot. The other thing about these are transparent, but because that white is so opaque, you can blend some of these colors with white and get a much more opaque result by doing that. So if you want to lay down opaque color, and I'll show you some opaque color that I did with my drawing. This is a sea blue. Let me lift this up a little bit so you can see a little bit closer. This is the teal green. You can see how much pigment you get out of this. Look at that. And you can see how, even though it's ink, it does flow like watercolor. And I think for the most part, you can use these as you would watercolor pencils, just with the acknowledgement that these are ink, and that when you put down that first layer, they become not necessarily permanent, but they become much more difficult to lift. And so you can use that to your advantage and do a lot of really intricate and really refined layering. You can see that. You can see all that pigment. And so one of the things that I think is the real plus for these pencils is the fact that at this price point, this is probably the most vibrant you're going to be able to get at this price point. The most vibrant, the most like quickly dissolved color at this price point that you're going to be able to get for water soluble media. And because of that layering thing that we talked about, the most versatile. Even though the color selection is a little wanting, you can definitely, you know, layer really well and keep that and sort of maximize the colors. So you can see the dissolvability here. This is, I think, like a, it's called a baked earth, but it feels like a sienna, like a burnt sienna or something. But you know, that could be me. All right. Next color is we have the bark, which is like a very dark brown. But the other thing too is that the dissolvability in these, I think maybe because they're ink, there is a little bit of a variance, and you can see here, let me show you this. You can see the pink that I did almost no, the fuchsia that I did almost no rubbing on it. It just came all out, and you saw how much I was trying to rub on that baked earth, but it's still pretty much where it was. And some of the pigment did not resolve completely. But for the most part, it does a really good job. There are a fair number of ink colors, and I think what Derwent expects you to do is to water these down to make grays, and I think that may be what, oh, this brush is kind of dry. I think that may be what some people do, but I had a hard time with it, and I had to do a lot of using the blocks with some white to be able to get it done. I'm not sure why I'm having trouble with this black here. It's feeling really dry here. But anyway, here's the black. Finally got the black out. Alright. Alright, that's the black. And a few more things before we get to the next stage. I'm going to try to scrub out this outliner and just show you that this outliner does a really good job, but it's not, you know, it's not permanent. So to me, I would struggle with this outliner because I would not want to trust it, because look at that. And yes, there's a lot of pushing around to lift it, but you saw that I had to do a similar amount to get some of these colors out. So, you know, some colors dissolved really quickly, but some colors did take a little bit more work. So I wouldn't want to do that. Now with the water soluble graphite, all of this should dissolve really quickly. So you know that this, you know, if you lay it down lightly, you can get it to, you know, sort of dissolve and fade into the background. And this is what I would have preferred. I wouldn't have laid it down this thick, obviously, but I would have preferred something like this, because then that way I know it's going to dissolve and I can plan accordingly. I don't know. That's just me, but everybody's different. I seem to be the only one who switched it out for the water-soluble graphite. All right, so this is the other part. This is the part we're going to do where I'm basically going to prove Derwent wrong if all goes well, or I'm going to prove myself wrong, is the fact that you can actually, they said this color is not supposed to be lifted, but this has been here for like 3 or 4 days, and look at this. You can totally lift dried up color. So they tell you that it's permanent, but it's really not. Look how that lifts. And you can lift a lot of this color. Look how much of this color you can lift. You can just keep going. You can just keep lifting color. Look at this. So they tell you that it's permanent, and that's really not true. I think permanent is not how I would describe these. I would describe these as, look at all that lifts out. I would describe these as layering really well and doing a great job at layering. And, you know, once you lay the color down, then it's much, much harder to lift. that's true, but the idea that once you lay the color down that first time, it's absolutely permanent once it's dry, that's not really true. I don't understand why they say it's true, because look at this. This is just a random color. You know, and this is throughout the case. Like, you can do this throughout. Like, this is not permanent. It's just not. Like, at the end of the, like, it's just not. Like, there's nothing, like, it's just not permanent. You could just keep going. Look at that. I could just keep going. And there's still more here. So once you dissolve this, they say, like, once you dissolve it and you let it dry completely, it's permanent. It's not. It layers and it sticks to the paper really well, so that when you try to lift it, it's more challenging to lift, which makes layering really nice, but it's not permanent. So, and maybe that's harder to say, that, you know, they layer really nicely, and once you put color down, it's harder for that color to lift, so you can use that to your advantage. But these aren't really the only water soluble pencils that allow you to layer in this way, and there will be a link up there to my Albrecht Dürer watercolor pencil review, because as you saw with those, they layer really, really nicely. In fact, let me show you something, just to show you. So I made these with the Derwent Inktense, and I am currently in the process of making these. Hold on, I had to pause. So I made that with the Derwent Inktense, and I made this with the Faber Castell Albrecht Dürer, and you can see I did a lot of layering. There's a little bit more lifting here. So even in my test where I'm trying to prove Derwent wrong, they're right about something, is that the fact that, you know, right here, you see that there is some lifting of this under layer here at the bottom, and other parts it works out much better. Right here, this was green underneath. You can see that there is a little bit of lifting here. So that's the real, to me, rather than saying that they are permanent and they don't lift. They do lift, but, you know, the benefit here is that it's much more difficult for you to lift, so it's a lot easier to layer, and in that way these are a lot more user friendly. And I think that's really the truth about these. It's not so much that they don't lift. They do lift, but it's just that, you know, they are much more user friendly, and layering is much less complicated. Like with the Albrecht Dürer, I have to be really careful and not use too much water when I layer. And with the Inktense, it's a little bit more forgiving. So this is a little bit more of a flexible medium and a little bit more forgiving of a medium, but it's not necessarily the only one that lets you layer, if that makes any sense. And somebody was really upset with me saying if that makes any sense. I say that, sorry. Anyway, so there's that. So I will take a break and then I will be right back. All right, I wanted to show you some more semi-completed pages. This was done with the Inktense pencils only. No blocks were used for these. It's not completed, but it's pretty close to it. And I made this a while ago, but you can see I put in the background and I did the little gecko in this, and I should finish this in a few weeks, but I have been stalled with other projects, so when I get back to this, it shouldn't take too long to finish. So there's this one that I did, and then this one that I did with a set of 12. It's not finished. You can see that I was trying to figure out how to make the most use of the white over here, and I may have messed it up in trying to use the white, but you can see that I did this here, and I think I started it with the set of 12, and I don't remember if I did everything with the set of 12, but you can see my first two, look, this was the first two respective pieces that I did with this on this here. This was done with a different pencil, but those two were done with the Inktense. All right, I will take a break. Okay, so now these two are a little bit of an unfair comparison, mainly because I did the grass on these, and I've also spent more time with these, even though this piece took me less time than this one. This one actually took me a longer period of time, because I had to blend the gray with the Inktense blocks, and it was a little bit of a challenge to blend the gray and get the way that I want it, and I never even got it to exactly where I want it. Whereas these, I have a little bit more experience with these pencils, so it was a little bit easier to get exactly what I was going for. You can see some of that re-wettability of the pencils here because I didn't really want to re-wet them. I was trying to add to them, and it ended up re-wetting the lower level of the background here. Whereas these, I knew that that was a risk, so I did it a little bit differently. So then, anyway, so that's something to keep in mind. They're not really similar. I did want to show you that. But the one that I actually wanted to show you of the Albrecht Dürer, this was made with the Albrecht Dürer. Now this was done, everything that you've seen here so far has been done on 100% cotton watercolor paper. This was also done on 100% cotton watercolor paper. This was done with the Albrecht Dürer, and I did do a lot of layering here for this project. You can see some layering there. You can see a little bit of the layering here. So basically I'm just saying that, you know, it's not the only the Inktense is not the only medium in which you can do the layering. What makes it special is the fact that the price, the fact that you can use silk, and the fact that, you know, for at that price point, that's probably the best layering option that you have, if that makes any sense. Okay, so the next thing that I wanted to show you is one thing I did not like about the Inktense, and I have seen this throughout Derwent, is that they make some really interesting color choices, and their colors are not always as balanced as I would like for the color variety to be. Now, this is a little bit of an unfair comparison because this is 120 colors versus 72 colors, but I do want to show you in particular the grays. You see here there's not really any grays. You're just getting various shades of black, and you're getting a lot of different shades of black. Now, people with more experience and more talent than me could probably make all these same grays with those pencils, but I had a hard time with the grays, as you saw, because that one took longer to do because I had to make the grays myself, and I just could not figure out how to do it. So there's that. This gives you both warm and cool grays, so that's really nice that you get a huge variety of warm and cool grays. With these, you just get the various shades of black. Let me show you up close the various shades of black and ink colors. And you know what you're supposed to do is you're supposed to water them down to get the different shades of light and dark tones that you want. Whereas with these, you can see all the varieties of gray, as well as a much more cohesive mix of going from yellows slowly shading into reds, and then slowly shading into purples and blues, and then greens. And then we get into more of the earth tones. And this has a really nice variety of earth tones. The Inktense does also have a really nice variety of earth tones and greens. They also do really well in the blue area. There's a few pinks here. I definitely was less than pleased with the reds. There are a lot of reds, but they're not different enough for my liking, and that could just be a personal choice. But I struggled a little bit with the reds. So there's that. So between the two, like, you know, it's not really fair to compare the two because these aren't ink, and these can be used on more surfaces, whereas this is watercolor, and it will lift. But if you had to choose between the two, because I do know that people run into that choice, I would say if you can afford the Derwent, if you can afford the Faber Castell Albrecht Dürer, I would go with the Faber Castell Albrecht Dürer, and I would get those first, and then I would get the Inktense second. Which is not to say don't get the Inktense, but I think that if you had to choose between these two, I would get the Albrecht Dürer. I think they're a little bit more for if you're just going to use them on paper and on coloring books. They're a little bit more versatile. The Inktense are, however, amazing for multimedia because of the fact that they're harder to lift. You can definitely go nuts with multimedia. So if you're going to be doing multimedia, then the Inktense are a better deal, if that makes any sense. All right. So now what we're going to do is we are going to do with the comparison. Pass this over. Okay, so we are going to do with the comparison, and really now you're going to see a lot of the appeal of the Derwent Inktense, especially for a lot of these inexpensive water-soluble mediums are just really lacking. think I told you all the things that are in that little comment box up there. But you can see, now granted these are Crayola watercolor, but you can see how lacking they are in the blend, as well as in the dissolvability. Just everything is just really, really lacking. And these are much more expensive watercolor pencils. But again, you run into the same problem of the lack of vibrancy here. Just look not very good sort of media, not very good sort of media. And so with this in mind, you can see the appeal now of the Inktense too. You see right here, now there's some fading here that's already starting to happen with some of these color sections right here, but you can see that the Inktense is definitely more vibrant. It just is. You can see the higher level of vibrancy on the Inktense. Now the fading is something that you will probably experience with both of them, but once again you can see the higher level of vibrancy with the Inktense, even though the Koh-i-Noor Mandaloos are actually really good watercolor pencils. The Inktense are still more vibrant, and you know, so there's that. And also I believe in America that the Inktense might be cheaper. Don't quote me on that, but I believe that the Inktense might be cheaper in America. The next one up is Derwent's own watercolor pencils, which were okay, but they were, again, you can see the lack of vibrancy here. Overall, there's just a general lack of vibrancy with these other water soluble media. So the last one is the Faber Castell, oh, not the last one, but this is the Albrecht Dürer Magnus. I did a different chart for the Magnus and for the regular one, but I can't find it, and I did not want to do another chart because this was already delayed. But you can see here, the Magnus is just a larger format. There are a couple of other differences, but it's a larger format. You can see here that in terms of vibrancy, that it's pretty close. For some colors, you might say the Inktense might be more vibrant, and then for other colors, you might say the Faber Castell Albrecht Dürer is more vibrant. But it's really very close. And for being for being much less expensive, so there's that. I think the set of 72 Inktense, when I bought the set of 72 with the money from the Patreon, it was like $74 for the full set, whereas the full set, granted, it's it's different, it's a higher number. The full set of the Albrecht Dürer is, I think, still $150 and up. So there's that. The Caran d'Ache Super Color, which I actually did enjoy. There's a Caran d'Ache Super Color 2 that I have not tested, but I actually did enjoy the Super Color. I have not done the full review on them, but you can see that they have really good vibrancy, and that the Inktense is pretty close, if not more vibrant in some colors. The Sun Yellow definitely looks more vibrant on the Derwent. So overall, now these do have a gray, which, I talked about how important it is to have at least some grays. There's a little bit more of, it looks a little bit more opaque on this, but it could just be the intensity of the level that I put in. But these definitely look more, they have more pop. So they have more like super vibrant colors. And the last one is slightly different, the Derwent Graphitin. I'll do a review of these in the coming weeks. I have this lying around. But anyway, so that's the big thing about this, is in terms of the price range. And I think we're done. I think we pretty much covered all the areas here that you need to know about the Derwent Inktense. So just to summarize, are they permanent when they lay down? As you saw, not really, but they do layer really nicely, and because of that, because it's much harder to lift, these are great for layering, and you can use these to make some really amazing, even photorealistic work, if you have both of them and you know what you're doing. So there's that. But in terms of, are they the only watercolor, there's a sort of myth, I guess, that with all watercolor pencils, once you lay down that first layer, the second layer will lift, and that's not necessarily true. There's, it's a matter of degree here. So in that sense, no, they're not permanent, but they are unique in other ways. I think the vibrancy and the color deposit and the easiness of dissolvability at this price point is really unmatched. And so I think that that's where you see the real appeal of this is in terms of the price point. These are going to be the most vibrant water soluble pencils that you are going to find, and that they're going to work, you know, pretty much similar to watercolor pencils, but it's not watercolor. And so in some ways it's easier for a lot of people to use because of the fact that it's not watercolor, and because of the fact that they layer so well. So in that sense, these are great pencils. I'm glad I got these. I will definitely be using these for projects as well as for future reviews. I don't want folks to think that I was unhappy with these. I really did enjoy these, but I think it's important to be honest with the fans and with the supporter that when you lay these down, they're not going to be permanent, but it is very difficult to lift them so that they layer really nicely. Overall, like I said, if you are, you know, and the fact that they come in blocks, I think that's another really good, really valuable part with these, because the Albrecht Dürer, even though they're coming out with some pencils in the larger format, the fact that these are in blocks really makes it invaluable, because then you can get more colors by having a smaller variety, and you can see all the colors that I had to use to get the gray that I wanted, and it still wasn't exactly what I wanted. So there's that. Anyway, so the fact that these come in blocks and that the colors are matched to the pencils, I think is really, really invaluable, and I think adds a lot to the appeal, especially for multimedia, where I think something like this, you know, is pretty much a no-brainer. But anyway, I think we're done, and I think I said everything I needed to say, except for the fact that, as I've mentioned in a previous video, my birthday is on September 16th, which is coming up. So if you guys have not subscribed, you guys should totally subscribe, because I will be doing a giveaway of a big hardbound coloring book, as well as an Amazon gift card, and that will be open, you know, the Amazon gift card portion will be open internationally to many other regions. So that's awesome. And I will see you guys next time, I guess. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you like this video, don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and let me know down in the comments if you guys have any questions, anything that you would like to see, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.